Purnamekam Jagadbijamadyam Niriham Nirakaram Omkara Vedyam Yato Jayate Palyate Yena Vishvam Tamisham Bhaje Liyate Yatra Vishvam. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Dear devotees, admirers and friends, today it is a very important day for Advaita Ashrama at Mayavati, because out of the 4 heritage buildings at Mayavati, 2 of them have undergone the process of restoration and conservation. And today these 2 restored and conserved heritage buildings are going to be inaugurated by most revered President Maharaj, Srimat Swami Smarananandaji Maharaj. The story of Advaita Ashrama is well known to all the devotees and followers of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. Even then, we would like to briefly present the main events that went into the formation of this unique center by Swami Vivekananda, mainly for the benefit of those who are new to the Ramakrishna movement and are not well acquainted with it. We all very well know that in 1893, Swami Vivekananda went to America and participated in the Chicago Parliament of Religions. His maiden speech on 11 September has become one of the important milestones in the modern history of humanity. It catapulted Hinduism and India to their true positions of unparalleled glory. Post 1893, in America and Europe, Swamiji spread the eternal and universal message of Hinduism, especially Advaita Vedanta, which is the highest and the core ideology of Hindu Sanatana Dharma. In 1896, Swami Vivekananda visited the continental Europe and went to spend some days in the Swiss Alps. Seeing the snow peaks of the Alps, he was reminded of the gorgeous and the majestic Himalayan peaks of India. And he, at that time, had cherished a wish to have an ashrama on the lap of the Himalayan mountains. And his wish to have an ashrama in the Himalayas was later fulfilled in 1899 with the help of an English couple who were his disciples. They were Captain James Henry Xavier and Mrs. Charlotte Elizabeth Xavier. Mr. and Mrs. Xavier purchased the plot of land which is today known as Mayavati, and thus in March 1899, Advaita Ashrama was founded. Swami Vivekananda exclusively dedicated this ashrama to the practice and preaching of Advaita Vedanta. This is something unique in the spiritual history of our country. In Mayavati, there are 4 heritage buildings. The main building, the captain's cottage, the mother's bungalow, as well as the Prabuddha Bharat building. As we see, these buildings have faced the ravages of time, and it has stood the tough weather conditions of the Himalayas for more than a century now. And owing to this, some of the portions of these structures were damaged or degenerated and needed urgent attention. Thus, in 2016 began the plan to restore and conserve these prestigious structures. In 2016, at that time, Revered Swami Suviranandaji was the Adhyaksha of Advaita Ashrama, during whose tenure this plan was first initiated. Later, the execution of this plan took off in 2018 when Revered Swami Muktidanandaji Maharaj was the Adhyaksha. At that time, most revered President Maharaj, Srimat Swami Smarananandaji Maharaj, had visited Mayavati, and he himself had laid down the foundation stone for the restoration work in March 2018. Now, after 4 years of hard work, The restoration of the main building as well as the Prabuddha Bharat building has been completed by the grace of the Divine as well as the blessings of all our senior monks and lay members. In and through this restoration and conservation work, we have tried as much as possible to take these buildings back to their original form as they existed when Swami Vivekananda had visited Mayavati in 1901. As it was stated before, Swamiji had stayed in the main building for 15 days in 1901. The first 6 days of his stay he spent on the first floor room from where the Himalayan peaks are very clearly visible. This room now has been converted into a meditation hall for monks. The remaining 9 days of Swamiji's stay at Mayavati, he spent his days in the ground floor room where there is a fireplace. This room, which was popularly known as Gol Kamra, has been transformed into a meditation hall meant for the visitors and lay devotees. On the ground floor of the main building, the room which had been used as the monastic dining hall and storeroom has been converted into an exhibition hall. In this exhibition is depicted the history of the Mayavati Ashrama on large panels. The original press, which was used to print the first editions of the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, as well as the life of Swami Vivekananda by the Eastern and Western disciples, has been brought back to its original place. In the Prabuddha Bharat building, we now have a Vedanta bookstore, an audiovisual room, as well as a reading room. In this way, these two buildings have been restored and conserved for the benefit of the posterity. And now we come to a very important segment of this program, and that is we would like to show to all of you a video presentation of these restored buildings. And this will be followed by an overview of the restoration work in the words of the architect and the conservationist, Mr. and Mrs. Kalamdani.
In whom is the universe? Who is in the universe? Who is the universe? In whom is the soul? Who is in the soul? Who is the soul of man? Knowing him and therefore the universe as ourself alone extinguishes all fear, brings an end to misery and leads to infinite freedom. The Advaita is the only system which gives unto man complete possession of himself. To give this one truth a freer and fuller scope in elevating the lives of individuals, we start this Advaita Ashrama on the Himalayan heights, the land of its first expiration. Advaita Ashrama was founded in March 1899. These are the earliest available photos of the ashrama buildings at Mayavati, which gives us an idea how these buildings looked. This is the main building of those days. This is the Prabuddha Bharata building. With the passage of time, as months rolled into years and years into decades, the buildings went on changing their looks. The Himalayas, with its harsh climatic conditions, began to slowly tell upon the health of these structures. Now, more than 100 years having gone by, some of the portions of the buildings were seen to be in a state of degeneration, and some portions had been damaged. Thus was initiated the plan to restore and conserve these heritage structures in 2016. In March 2018, the work of restoring the buildings took off with the blessings of the most revered President Maharaj, Srimat Swami Smarananandaji. In the process of restoration, extensive flooring and brick masonry were undertaken. Old wall plaster were removed. Walls were freshly plastered with a mixture of mud, straw and cow dung. Degenerated wooden beams and rafts were carefully treated and repaired. Severely damaged woods were replaced with new ones. At some places, extensive structural repairs were done. Load testing of the wooden beams were carried out to ensure their strength. The roofs of buildings in the Himalayas are traditionally made of stone tiles. The old roof was completely dismantled and a new one was constructed. In the midst of the corona pandemic and many other challenges and hurdles, it took almost 4 years for the work to be completed. Now, after the completion of the restoration work, this is the facade of the main building. This is the front side of PB building. The western side of PB building. The roof of the main building. The earlier bookstall in PB building is now a reading room for the visitors. The press, which was earlier in the PB building, has been shifted to its original place in the main building. The northwestern staircase in the main building. The backside view of the main building. The first floor interior of the main building. The side view of the main building. The Gol Kamra has now been converted to a meditation hall for the visitors. The old monastic dining hall has been converted to an exhibition hall. This restoration work has been the outcome of the teamwork consisting of the monks as well as the lay members. These two heritage buildings today stand restored to remind the visitors about the great Swami Vivekananda and his spiritual legacy for the welfare of humanity.
Namaskar. I'm Kiran Kalamdani, she's Anjali. We are partners in the firm of Kimaya, architects, urban designers, conservationists and valuers. We are based out of Chinswad, a town near Pune, and we had been asked by Balaji Singh Sisodia, the late Balaji Singh Sisodia, to work on the conservation of Mayavati and the heritage buildings in it, for which he approached us somewhere in the August of 2016. We went to Mayavati together in December of the same year, and we found that there are no measured drawings of the buildings that existed over there, though there were many photographs, a book by Amrita Saun and another one on the charms of Mayavati, but there were no drawings at all. It was very necessary for doing the conservation that we first get a detailed measured drawings of the buildings, which we did in our stay for 2 days in that place. Followed by that, it was very necessary to outline a strategy for conservation, a kind of attitude towards maintaining these buildings and taking back them to a period when Swami Vivekananda and Mother Savior lived in that place. And it was very essential to understand what the building really stands for. Swami Vivekananda's attitude towards letting the truth and nothing but the truth enter here was one of the main slogans. It was one of the main attitudes towards the conservation of the place, which was maintained throughout. A strategy for trying to evolve different building techniques, use of materials and their maintenance in such a way that at all times the original effect of the founding fathers of this place remains the same. We chose the firm of Sachin Vishwakarma for doing the contracting work, or getting us the material, the labor and the supervision that is required for such a work. And it was very important that he follows the instructions, the specifications, the drawings and the various directions that are given by the monks who are responsible for this. In the beginning, for preparing the detailed project report, Swami Tattvavidananda was responsible for directing us towards making of the master plan. Somewhere in the March of 2018, when the work started, Muktidanandaji Maharaj took an initiative of introducing us to all the monks at Belur Mutt, which we were very grateful to him. And the Maharajji, the President Maharaj at Belur Mutt, also gave his blessings to start the work, which was started in March 2018. Over the next year and a half, several visits were made to the place, and many of the specifications, many of the drawings and some of the material that was specified was to be procured from various places, which was done systematically with the help of Madhuranand Maharaj, who was in charge of all the technicalities and looking at the work from very close quarters.
For the structural stability of the building, Dr. Chikkarmane from IIT Roorkee was involved, and after assuring the structural stability against the earthquake and stability of all the structural members, the finishes came into picture. Finishes are very important because you see them directly. So the choices were made. There were several discussions about the plaster work to be provided for the existing plaster surfaces. So the samples were prepared by Sachin Vishwakarma along with his team under the guidance of Nathuram, who is the local craftsperson. So two samples were prepared. One was with using lime and the second was using mud plaster, which has ingredient of husk and cow dung and using local technology. So finally everybody decided to go ahead with the unpainted mud plaster, which gave a very good texture, color, and the second quality of mud plaster is it gives insulation against the extreme climate. It gives thermal comfort by 6 to 7 degrees in the cold winters. The second choice of the material was to be made about the pointing for the stonework or whether it is to be covered with the plaster. The philosophy of the conservation of this place is based on the truth, that is the principle led by the Swami Vivekanandaji. So it was decided to go ahead with the pointing for the stonework and leave the stonework exposed in its original manner. The third material was slate tiles, that is the roof cover, and which is locally used and with the local technology. We were impressed that Swami Muktidanandaji climbed all the way to the rooftops to see the existing condition of the roof. So, and later on it was decided to lay the slate tiles properly along with the toughened glass skylight.
One of the major challenges of the work was the timber work, since it was the framework of the building and it needed to be replaced because the timber had in some parts gone bad because of the action of the weather, the rain, the cold and the sun had played upon the timber joints, and many of the joints had been rendered decayed or dry or wet rot. Because of that, it was very necessary to locate all these joints and to replace either in part or wholly these timbers which were in oak or they were in pine. Now, well-seasoned timber was not easy to get in the hills, and since there is a ban on the timber felling, it had to be brought from authorized sources, from places where it was sold by the forest department. Sachin Vishwakarma and his team, along with the Mayavati monks, sourced such timbers, and they got it and did a fine job of replacing that. His carpenters removed quite a few hundred square meters of paint, oil paint, which is a nice material to look at in the first couple of years, but later on it quickly loses its appearance. Hence, the use of traditional applicants for preservation of timber were suggested by the Forest Research Institute in Dehradun, and they were gracious enough to come over to Mayavati to look at the conditions of the buildings and suggest the ways of maintaining them in a similar manner. Earlier, the timbers were covered with metal sheets, and those metal sheets were removed to reveal the richness of the natural material. There were some splits in the timbers, which is a natural quality of the oaks, and Dr. Chikkarmane and even the Forest Research Institute people, they said, you maintain them, the splits are not any cause for concern. It was very important that the occupants of the building and the people who are going to maintain it, they look after the stability of it and the presentation of various materials of the building. Apart from that, it was the surrounding areas, the wonderful garden that has been preserved by them. There are also other parts of the building, such as the toilets, the various plumbing that goes in it, the electrification, the lightning conductor, All these had to be organized in such a way that they do not unduly get expressed in somewhere the exteriors or the interiors of the building. As far as the use is concerned, the room where Swami Vivekananda stayed when he was here and the Gol Kamra, they were the most important parts of the building that had to maintain their earlier appearance, and which was very properly done after quite a few debates. Besides this, there is a gallery of the story of Mayavati, which has been put together in place of the earlier kitchen. Since the kitchen has moved over to a much larger place, the place of the kitchen was considered as the most suitable one for this gallery. And the monks of Mayavati have made a wonderful gallery over there, which shows the developments that gradually happened at Mayavati, including the small press machine that is placed in the press room. It's a very tiny room in the northwestern corner, but that has been maintained as it is. The signage that is necessary for the building, and most importantly, the aspects of maintenance that were outlined very clearly in the project have been followed. Using the guidelines that were set out in the original detailed project report, the Prabuddha building, mother's cottage and father's cottage will all be taken up and done up in a similar manner, so that anyone who comes to Mayavati will be told about the humble origins of the place, and which has now grown to be a much larger center with the hospital and several other facilities for the people of Kurti and such villages. One of the challenges here was also to see that the vernacular, the material that are used by the vernacular architecture as we see in the village of Kurti, and that brought in by the colonials, meaning the various gable ends, the valley gutters, the joints between the two materials. For example, the joint between the toughened glass and the slate, which has been bridged by copper flashings, which were important. Normally people would have given lead flashings, which has got a problem of lead poisoning into the waters that are consumed by the people in the village down there in the hills. By using copper flashing, we made it sure that all the water that flows down from the building is also pure enough and not contaminated in any way by heavy metals. Finally, Mayavati has been a great experience for our practice and the young architects who work in our firm, Rachit Kalamdani and Priyanka Kalamdani, who are architects and who have worked on the building and visited the place also, met the several monks over there and interacted with them for the conservation are important.
Along with the conservation of the buildings here, the other important aspects are the magnificent view of Himalayas, the peace of the forest, fresh air, beautiful garden maintained by Akira Swamiji, and the love bestowed upon us by all the members at the ashram. It is now the responsibility of the administration of Mayavati Ashram to maintain these qualities in future.
We extend our best wishes to the team at Mayavati, who will now start occupying the building, and for the day of the inauguration of the main building, we give our heartiest congratulations to entire team who has worked relentlessly for it. Swami Tattvavidananda, Swami Muktidanandaji and Swami Shuddhidanandaji, who have been the Adhyaksha Maharaj, who have led the entire team very successfully towards the conservation of Mayavati, which is an extremely emotional point for all the Swamijis at Belur Mutt and several other places all across the world. It is an important landmark that is achieved. Thank you very much.
This restoration work would not have succeeded without the hard work, support, assistance, and participation of a large number of people, both monastic as well as lay. As the list of the people involved in this project is a very long one, it is not advisable for us to take the name of each and every person here, and therefore we have given the names of all those persons who have been involved with this project at the end of this video. Nevertheless, we express our heartfelt, sincerest gratitude to all of them, without whose help this project would not have seen success. We take this opportunity to also inform all of you that Prabuddha Bharata Archives is being made available online for subscribers from today onwards. Prabuddha Bharata has been the mouthpiece of the Ramakrishna order for the last 125 years, and we are happy to make the entire archives available online for the benefit of all serious readers and thinkers. Along with the restoration of the two heritage buildings, about which we have already spoken and you all have seen the video, apart from these two restoration work, we have also constructed a new staff quarter for the employees of Advaita Ashrama. This staff quarter is located just behind the existing Goshala or Kaushik. So this also is going to be inaugurated today in today's program. Now, most revered President Maharaj's benedictory message will be read out, and in and through which the restored buildings, the Prabuddha Bharata archive, as well as the staff quarter will be declared open. Following this President Maharaj's message, there will be messages of revered Swami Suviranandaji Maharaj, the General Secretary of Ramakrishna Math and Ramakrishna Mission, and then the messages of Swami Muktidanandaji and Swami Bodhasaranandaji.
It is a matter of great joy to know that the two heritage buildings at the Advaita Ashrama, Mayavati, have been restored and conserved. When I visited Mayavati in March 2018, the foundation for this work was laid. Many sadhus and devotees had come to attend that event. Restoration specialists, the architect, the contractor, and the entire team was present, and the work of restoration and conservation of these heritage buildings took off. Now, after 4 years, these buildings are ready. Today, I declare these buildings open for all. I congratulate Swami Shuddhidananda, the present president of the Advaita Ashrama, and his team of monastics, restoration specialists, the architect, the contractor, lay members, and all who helped in this work, having hallowed memory of Swami Vivekananda in whatever way, for successfully completing this project in the midst of various obstacles and challenges. I also congratulate the past presidents of the Advaita Ashrama, namely Swami Bodhasarananda, Swami Tattvavidananda, and Swami Muktidananda, during whose tenure planning of this restoration and conservation work started. Along with these two restored buildings, I also declare open the new staff quarter, a decent place of stay for the employees of the Advaita Ashrama was a long felt need, which has been fulfilled now. The main purpose for which Advaita Ashrama was founded by Swami Vivekananda is the practice and preaching of Advaita Vedanta in its purest form, without the slightest contamination of dualistic ideas. Advaita Ashrama has been successfully doing this for more than 120 years, and in the work of spreading the message of Advaita Vedanta, Prabuddha Bharata, the monthly journal, has played a significant role for the last 125 years. It is noteworthy that with the changing times, Prabuddha Bharata too is adapting itself to the new technological developments. I am happy to know that Prabuddha Bharata is being made available on the digital medium, and from today onward, the entire Prabuddha Bharata archive is being made available online for subscription. This is a very welcome step which will help the new generation of readers to access Prabuddha Bharata on mobile phones and other digital devices and get enriched. Swami Vivekananda's message is universal, meant for the entire human race. Advaita Ashrama has played a pivotal role in spreading his message all over the world. I convey my hearty compliments to Swami Shuddhidananda and his team for all these new developments and pray to Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother Sri Sharada Devi, and Swami Vivekananda to bless them with the needed strength and resolve to carry on with the divine work for the welfare of all and for the happiness of all. Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Sukhaya. May their blessings be on all. Om Tat Sat. Swami Smaranananda, President, Belumat.
सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 हरिः ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतङ्गमय ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः
नमः श्री अतिराजाय विवेकानंद सूरये सच्चित्सुख स्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे Most revered Srimat Swami Smarananandaji Maharaj, the President of the Ramakrishna Order, Swamis Bodhasaranandaji and Advaita, both former Adhyaksha of Advaita Ashrama Mayavati, Swami Suviranandaji, the present Adhyaksha of Advaita Ashrama Mayavati, brother monks of Mayavati Ashrama, both past and present, devotees, admirers and friends. Today, we are celebrating the inaugural ceremony of the two renovated buildings of the Mayavati Ashrama, namely the main building and the Prabuddha Bharata building, where Swamiji Maharaj spent 15 days and sanctified these places. Most revered President Maharaj will inaugurate these buildings in virtual mode. On this historic occasion, we congratulate all those who had been even remotely associated with the renovation of these buildings. My special compliments are reserved for Swami Suviranandaji and his dedicated team members. I am delighted to learn that the restoration and renovation of the historic main building and the Prabuddha Bharata building at Mayavati have been completed, overcoming several obstacles, and are now ready for inauguration. It's a matter of great joy that a newly constructed staff quarters will also be inaugurated on this occasion. The main building, sanctified by the stay of the prophet of the modern age, Swami Vivekananda, for about 15 days in January 1901, now has meditation halls for devotees and monks and an exhibition hall. I congratulate all those involved in this labor of love. They have done well in successfully accomplishing the challenging task of renovating an heritage building with dedication, hard work, innovation and excellence. Great men live in their words and deeds, which continue to cast a spell on humanity centuries after their mortal frames have disappeared from sight. This is more true of mighty spiritual giants like Buddha, Christ and Vivekananda. Napoleon the Great, in a mood blended with anguish and admiration, said, quote, "Our kingdom breaks even when we are alive, but his," meaning thereby Lord Jesus' kingdom, begins at his death and extends forever, unquote. Same is true in case of other prophets too. These man-gods continue to live through their ideas that stay relevant for centuries, inspiring people. They live in the hearts of the people who adore them. Their glories are reflected in the lives of the people, which are shaped according to their philosophies, and their legacy continue to work through the organizations, the sampradayas they have set forth in motion. Thus their mission of Lokosangraha proceeds uninterrupted in the corridors of time. Swamiji made a prophecy that the message he had given to the world will stay relevant for 1500 years. Swamiji had repeatedly cautioned against the common mistake made by the followers who hold on to the personality of the Master while ignoring his teachings or paying lip service to them. But common masses need something concrete to focus their emotions, a prop to lean on, something gross and material that would connect them with their ideal. That is why places like Ayodhya, Mathura, Navadvip, Kamarpukur, Dakshineshwar, Jairambati, etc., associated with Avatara Purushas, continue to attract people. That is why the worship of relics and the preservation of articles and places associated with the spiritual personages are prevalent in all religions. A Murta Maheshwara, Swami Vivekananda, wherever he lived, left behind some of his personal belongings. At one place it may be a club, at another a cap, a shawl, shoes, books, garments, and so on. Thus scattered all over India and the world are preserved with great care the houses he had lived, buildings where he had lectured, items he had used, and left behind his immortal blessings for his hosts. The great Swami knew that these items will be worshipped in future, and they, by their power of association, will lead the people to him and thus draw them to Vedanta. The fire room at the ground floor of the heritage building at Mayavati holds in his bosom treasured memories of Swami Vivekananda in varieties of moods. Sometimes he meditated in grave silence. At another times he was talking with his doting admirers on various topics. He sang, he laughed, he ate and slept there. Spending even a few hours in the same environment where Swamiji stayed may perhaps bring to us the intimation and invitation to our own spiritual and immortal existence, the eternity. For what is Vivekananda if not an embodiment of a practical philosophy? He was the personification of that immortal spirit which the Upanishads are eloquent of. The ocean of consciousness that almost for 4 decades moved amongst us in a human form is now free and scattered in spirit, inspiring men and women everywhere to discover their unity with God. His place is that of the transcendent realm, Akhandekar, and he was at home in the sterile heights of the Himalayas far away from all worldly tantrums. What a lifelong fascination Swamiji had for the Himalayas. How many times he came running here to study, to pray, to remain in contemplation of the Absolute. As he himself had so eloquently expressed in his lecture at Almora, I quote, "As peak after peak of this father of mountains began to appear, all the propensities to work, all planning, all ambitions vanished, and the mind reverted to one eternal theme that Himalayas preach, that of renunciation." Unquote. Swamiji had predicted that ardent souls will come to this Deva Bhumi, knowing that everything is useless except the worship of the Lord and the Lord alone. On these holy mountains, he wanted to establish one of his great centers to teach one eternal religion, and that is the perception of the divine within. Swamiji says, I quote, "Here therefore must be one of those centers, not merely of activity, but more of calmness, of meditation, and of peace. And I hope someday to realize it," unquote. Mayavati, cradled in the laps of the Himalayas, is the crystallization of Swamiji's strength. His spirit permeates this place, wafting through the air, carrying the sweet fragrance of pine and devdaru, is the gentle murmur of Soham, Soham, I am that, I am that. Mind soars high, world is left behind, and for a moment we get a glimpse of that beatitude beyond thoughts and words, the one without a second. I am sure the perceptive visitors to this abode of the Absolute that has been lovingly recreated will catch something of that infinite spirit that came in flesh and blood in the form of Swami Vivekananda. Therein lies the significance of these restored buildings. I once again thank Swami Suviranandaji for giving me this excellent opportunity for being with you all, virtually though. Before we wrap up, let us chant the great Upanishadic mantra which Swamiji Maharaj so frequently used to quote, and also is the samambunam of the spirit of the Prabuddha Bharata. Uttishtato jagrato prappuparan nibodhato. Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. Thank you so much. Hari Om Tat Sat.
Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhur Namashriyati Rajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharini Sarve Janaha Sukhino Bhavantu Sri Ramakrishna Sharanam. My reverential pranams to Most Revered President Maharaj, who has inaugurated online this restored main building of Mayavati, sanctified by the stay of Swami Vivekananda. My respectful pranams to Revered General Secretary Maharaj and Revered Bodhasaranandaji Maharaj, Revered Tattvavidanandaji Maharaj and Shuddhidanandaji Maharaj, Adhyaksha of Advaita Ashrama, other monks who are participating in this program. I consider it as a blessed privilege to be a part of this unique project of conservation and restoration of 150-year-old very significant heritage structure located in the remote Himalayan terrain. Our hearty good wishes and grateful thanks to Kiran Kalamdani ji and Mrs. Anjali Kalamdani ji, the architects of the project, who in fact masterminded this restoration project by giving all the detailed working drawings. I am glad that Mr. Kalamdani is also going to speak on this occasion. Swami Vivekananda stayed in this building of Mayavati Advaita Ashrama for 15 days during the turn of 19th century to 20th century. He came all the way by traveling 6 to 7 days of difficult journey through mountainous terrain. The main purpose of his visit was to reinforce his dream project by establishing Advaita Ashrama, emphasizing the non-dual that is Advaita philosophy of universal relevance. By this visit to Mayavati, Swamiji also wanted to encourage Mother Saviour, who came all the way from England with her husband Captain Saviour to this Himalayan abode to fulfill the vision of their spiritual master, Swami Vivekananda. The main objective of restoration, as suggested by architect Kiran Kalamdani, is to preserve the original features of the building as seen in the old pictures of the main building with regard to external features like roofing, wall surface and old architectural features. Accordingly, the plastering of the outer wall was removed completely and original stone surface was exposed with pointing of joints. The additional appendages which were added in course of time in front of balcony and corner bathrooms were removed from open veranda and old frontage features were restored. We are indeed grateful to Tata Trust, Mumbai, and Infosys Foundation, Bangalore, for generously funding this restoration project. Srimati Sudhamurti ji came all the way to Mayavati to see this project and see the functioning of the Mayavati hospital. We were fortunate to have Revered Present Maharaj Swami Smarananandaji to inaugurate and commence the actual work on site at Mayavati. His 1 week stay at Mayavati during this time gave us a lot of guidance and encouragement to begin this challenging, difficult work of restoration and go ahead with subsequent tasks. Revered Maharaj advised and guided on some important aspects like Golkambra of the main building where Swamiji lived for 9 days should be made into a meditation center both for visitors and monks. The previous dining hall, located just adjacent to the Golkambra, was made into exhibition depicting the history of Mayavati and about Swami Vivekananda. The room on the first floor where Swami Vivekananda stayed for the first 6 days was made into a spacious monastic meditation room. The room in which Mother Saviour stayed on the first floor was preserved with suitable interior features to recall her dedicated pioneering work at Mayavati. Swami Madhurananda and myself worked together for this project. His assistance in various ways was very significant, which enabled us to steer this project. There used to be periodical meetings of architect, contractor, structural engineers and wood experts from Dehradun, and Madhurananda used to maintain minutes of the meeting and also meticulously record various works to be done as decided in every meeting. So, all the details of work and proceedings of meetings were put in black and white and pictures we used to sit together, discuss the matter, and then feed them into computer. This restoration work at Mayavati is a good teamwork amidst so many odds and obstacles, that too in a harsh, cold climate. This place, Mayavati, is also cut off from any local human habitation and working labor force. Every material, small or big, had to come from towns which are situated at a very long distance. This team, which went into the restoration work of multiple challenges, comprised of Sri Balaji Singh Sisodia, a dedicated engineer and a devoted person from Pune, Sri Kiran Kalamdani ji, the architect from Pune, Sri Sachin Vishwakarma, the experienced contractor from Thane, Mumbai, Sri Sanjay Chiketmane, structural engineer of IIT Roorkee and his students, Sri Nathuram Vishwakarma Mistri, the elderly 80-year-old local craftsman, knowledgeable in making natural mud and stone slate roofing, was of crucial importance to us. His timely suggestion and guidance greatly helped us in setting the complicated roof structure. Wood experts from the Forest Research Institute, Dehradun, also guided us from time to time. The team was well supported by all the monastic brothers of the Mayavati Ashrama, Trailokyanandaji and Vanishwaranandaji, ex-managers of Mayavati, Suviranandaji, Sneha Maharaj, the present manager, Swaswarupananda, Madhurya Maharaj, the Bhandari, Ekavidananda, who looked after accounts, editor of PB Narsimhananda, and assistant to editor Divyakripananda, Sumit Maharaj, our hospital in charge, Ekadevanandaji, and the experienced person of Mayavati, Swami Shamananda Akira Maharaj, and other monastic brothers supported and helped the project in their own way. To start the conservation work, it was necessary to empty the building of all furniture and interiors and wall hangings and many other materials of historic importance accumulated over a period of 150 years. It was a very sensitive, difficult work. Swami Trailokyanandaji Sham Maharaj, the former manager, managed this complicated work of shifting and keeping everything in safe custody. We are thankful to Mahesh Shetty of Multiplex Chemicals, Bangalore, an alumnus of Sri Ramakrishna Vidyashala, for supplying free of cost all the chemicals for the surface wood treatment. 50% of the building was in fact made of wood, and to prevent any insect and fungal attack, all the wood surfaces had to be treated with special type of chemicals. We are grateful to Prakash Lohia ji of Merino Plywood Manufacturer from Hapur for evincing keen interest in making the first floor surface soundproof by using suitable cushion material. We are grateful to Swami Atmanishtananda Saptarshi Maharaj, Secretary of Ramakrishna Mission K3, for providing copper sheets free of cost procured from a known devotee and owner of the factory from Jaipur. The Prabuddha Bharata building, the next one, which was quite a strong structure, was subsequently taken up for restoration in the year 2020 with certain modifications in the approach of restoration. It was very systematically and efficiently executed by the hard work of Mayavati Pradyut Maharaj. On the whole, in spite of some delay in some stages and a few obstacles in between, the restoration work went off more or less as planned, and we could complete this sensitive conservation work very satisfactorily, restoring most of its original features by the grace of our Holy Trio. It is indeed a precious lifetime spiritual elevating experience to be in Mayavati and be a part of this sacred restoration work of a unique type in the Himalayan terrain, which is our devoted offering to the divinity and the divine glory of Swamiji. I am thankful to Swami Shuddhidanandaji, Adhyaksha of Advaita Ashrama, for inviting me to share my experience about restoration on this occasion of online inauguration of the restored building of Mayavati. Thank you.
Advaita Ashrama Mayavati has been sanctified by the stay of Swami Vivekananda for 15 days. Some of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna also visited the place from time to time. The main building in which they stayed is about 150 years old. I am glad that the restoration work of two heritage buildings inaugurated through the hands of Revered Swami Smarananandaji Maharaj, President, Ramakrishna Mutt and Ramakrishna Mission, about 4 years ago is finished. I had the honor to be present on that occasion. Heritage buildings and monuments in any country are mute testaments of its glorious past. It is our bounden duty to restore and maintain all the old buildings at Mayavati. Here, restoration refers to the process of correctly revealing the state of the historic building as it looked when Swami Vivekananda visited Mayavati. Hence, we have to safeguard the historical, architectural, aesthetic and spiritual significance of Mayavati at any cost. For this, we have to engage an expert team in depicting the form, features and character of the building as it appeared at a particular period of time by means of the removal of features from other periods in its history and reconstruct the missing features from the restoration period. One of the main purposes of the advent of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda was to bring to the masses the truths of God and religion in an easily understandable manner. God and religion, according to them, were meant for all, to be practiced for their spiritual and material welfare. The first activity that began at Mayavati was the republication of Prabodha Bharata, started in 1896 by Swami Vivekananda, with the motto of spreading Vedantic thought, culture and values. Running this magazine for 125 years is no mean achievement, and that too in the dense forest of the Himalayas. It is easy to start a journal, but running it for such a long period is daunting. Sustaining the journal without break and without diluting its ideals is indeed praiseworthy. Many stalwart monks carried the burden of editing, publication, and distribution of this journal over the years, and these Swamis have contributed in several ways towards the uninterrupted dissemination of ennobling ideas through the medium of the journal. Today, I remember all those pious souls who, out of their love for Swamiji and his mission, worked hard, sacrificing their personal interests for this longest running English magazine of India. Swami Vivekananda, with his deep spiritual insight, had found that Vedanta alone can fully satisfy the religious hunger of modern age. He, therefore, presented Vedanta as a universal religion. His mission was to carry the spiritual message of India all over the world to enlighten the human race. Another purpose of Swami Vivekananda in starting the monastery at Mayavati was to put into practice Advaita, the non-dualistic system of Vedanta. He wanted the inmates to have direct experience of non-dual, infinite self attained by following definite spiritual disciplines. Moreover, Swamiji wanted Advaita to be made practical not only at the mountain top, but in all walks of life, not only for the monk and the recluse, but also for the fisherman, the lawyer and the student, everyone. Advaita Ashrama has made available to the common man the highest truths of Vedanta, which had in the past been in the hands of a few privileged people. The biggest contribution of Advaita Ashrama is the publication of the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, Life of Vivekananda by his Eastern and Western disciple, classic yoga series like Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Raj Yoga, lectures from Colombo to Almora, etc. In 1924, the life of Sri Ramakrishna with a foreword by Mahatma Gandhi was published. It was followed by two important books on the life of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda by Roma Rolla, books on Sri Ramakrishna and Vivekananda by Max Muller, Christopher Isherwood and Sister Gargi were also published from this center. All the principal Upanishads, Brahma Sutras, different commentaries on Bhagavad Gita and works of Shankaracharya were translated into English. These translations are considered authentic and are being taught in different universities. This ashrama has published staggering several million copies of Vivekananda, His Call to the Nation, and other books relating to spiritual growth at a nominal cost. Original photographs of Thakur, Ma, Swamiji and their disciples were preserved all these years. Now these are being worshipped by devotees everywhere. Through the pages of Prabhupada and various books published by Advaita Ashrama, the message of Sri Ramakrishna Vivekananda in Vedanta has gone into the hearts of millions of people. Advaita Ashrama, whether through digitalization or through physical books, will continue to disseminate the message of eternal India. It will lighten the world for a long time to come. Many monks who worked at one time or the other in Advaita Ashrama Mayavati were sent abroad to take up the work of preaching Vedanta in the West. The list is quite long. Another contribution of Advaita Ashrama is the starting of a charitable hospital in 1903. Moved by the extreme helplessness and suffering of the poor and illiterate villagers in times of illness, the Swamis of the ashrama began distributing medicine to those who came from long distances. Patients had to cross hills and dales to get medical help. The treatment given here is entirely free of charge right from inception. Free transport is also provided to the patients. Medical camps are held throughout the year to provide special care. This ashrama has a guest house that provides accommodation for spiritual seekers who are seriously interested in prayer, meditation, and a contemplative life. Some people who met tragedies came here to get peace and succor. It is a matter of great joy and pride that Advaita Ashrama in this program is going to launch the online version of Prabhupada Bharata archives. This online archive will be made available only to subscribers, and it will contain all the articles right from 1896 to 2020. The archives can be browsed year-wise, month-wise, and will also feature the title search and author search. May Advaita Ashrama continue to promote the noble ideas and ideals of India and life-giving message of Ramakrishna Vivekananda and Vedanta in the most expressive way.
Before we end this program, we would once again like to thank each and every person involved in this restoration and conservation work. The carpenters, the masons, the electricians, the laborers, the engineers. To each one of them, our heartfelt gratitude. And in a very special sense, we deem it necessary to mention the names of a few members whose contribution has been noteworthy. Among the monks, we extend our heartfelt thanks to Swami Bodhasaranandaji, during whose tenure as the Adhyaksha, this plan was first initiated. Swami Muktidanandaji, he started the execution of the plan and directed this project in all its minutest details, and he also collected the needed funds for it. Swami Swarananandaji, he offered technical help in the initial stages. Swami Mayavati, who supervised the remodeling work of the Prabhupada Bharat building and contributed in the finishing of the main building. Swami Madhuranandaji, he supervised the restoration work of the main building and also contributed in the creation of the exhibition hall. Swami Vanishwaranandaji, Swami Suhridanandaji, and Swami Swaswarupanandaji, they all contributed in the ashrama's logistics during the duration of the project. Swami Trailokyanandaji, he helped in clearing the main building for the work to take off. Swami Atmanishtanandaji. He contributed in helping acquire materials from Rajasthan. Swami Gyanishanandaji. He contributed in the creation of the conceptual framework of the exhibition hall. And Swami Mahavakyanandaji, who came all the way from Bangalore to help in the electrification work. Among the lay members, we express our heartfelt gratitude to the following persons. The late Sri Balaji Sisodia. He was the honorary supervising engineer from the side of the ashrama in the initial stages of the project. Unfortunately, he left this mortal world midway, leaving us feel his absence palpably. This restoration project owes much to this wonderful soul, whom we all very fondly remember. Shri Kiran and Anjali Kalamdani, the architects and conservationists who steered the project successfully. Shri Ravi Ranade of Pune, the structural engineer who helped in making the initial structural audit report. Shri Sanjay Chikarmane of IIT Roorkee, the structural engineer, and his colleagues were a great help in determining the structural soundness of the main building. Shri Sachin Vishwakarma, the contractor, and his team that did the restoration work. Shri Jaishankar Vishwakarma, the contractor's supervisor. Dr. Savita, director of the Forest Research Institute, Dehradun, and the team of professionals sent by her guided us in the work of wood preservation and related tasks. Nathuram, a senior resident of the Furti village, was a great help in making us understand the traditional method of building and roof making in the hilly terrain. Sudhir Mirage, the artist from Mumbai, who designed and produced the panels of the exhibition hall. Bobai Acharya, the engineer from Kolkata, whose men have professionally worked in the making of the exhibition hall. Mahesh, the electrician from Lohaghat, who has done the major part of the electrification work in both the buildings. Haldar Babu and Banshi, the devotees from Kolkata, who have helped in the electrification work. Prasad, who came all the way from Mysuru to help in the electrification and lighting work. Mahesh Shetty, who had supplied the PU for the wood polishing work. Shri Prakash Lohiaji, who had generously helped us in furnishing these two buildings and other related works. The Tata Trusts, Mumbai, whose generous donation has made us comfortably wade through this project. And finally, Srimati Sudha Murthy ji of the Infosys Foundation, whose munificent financial assistance has made the success of this project a reality. She herself had visited Mayavati and then granted this assistance. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to all these members, without whose help this project would not have been successful. Thank you.